Kimmel,
Yep.
not going to be back on the air tonight, I don't think.
Well, no, because
And
Fridays are always pre-taped anyway.
yeah,
We
and
run the.
I know, but they did consider because as you know, Sean, a good way to bury this would be to do it tonight, and have it on late Friday night and say what he needs to say and hope it tamps down over the weekend. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think it's likely. Dan, as compared to 24 hours ago, are you more or less inclined to think he'll never be back on?
Same. I don't.
Same.
I don't think he's coming back.
Yeah. So you were like 100 yesterday and 100 today.
Yeah. I
Sean,
mean, 90.
yeah. Sean,
90%.
more or less likely based on the last 24 hours.
Less likely that it'll be on. Three quick points. One, he was going to double down. They'll never allow that. So that's number one. You cannot allow a guy who's going to double down, go on and ruin your business. Number two, let's not forget that Jimmy Kimmel got that slot at ABC after Bill Maher was canceled. So that there is a bit of irony in how this slot came to be. And three, just a pro tip to all of the Jimmy Fallon, Politico, CNN, New York Times, and most of the DC Democrats, before you get on your high horse about the First Amendment and Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled, remember your lack of concern about the First Amendment the last 10 years when the right was being canceled. And at least another pro tip, admit that what he said was wrong before you actually talk about the First Amendment. What Jimmy Kimmel said was inflammatory, false, inaccurate. And before you start defending the First Amendment, at least admit that what Jimmy Kimmel said was wrong.
I couldn't agree more. Hey, there's a new Washington Post poll. We're going to pull a graphic from it or two. Thank you. Before Dan gets his equal time here, because I don't want to be sued by the FCC.
I'll call Brandon.
I appreciated what you said, Sean, and I hope you and your party would consider your record of, in the past, opposing government interference in the private sector. And what the head of the FCC and the president have said are outrageous. And not only Paul Gigot thinks that, and Brit Hume thinks that, and what's her name? Lives in Alaska. What's the name of the lady who writes
Mr.
the Wall Street
Murkowski.
Journal? No.
Kim
Jerry
Strassel.
Moran.
Kim
We can go on
Strassel.
and on.
And then any number of Republican
Senators.
officials, and even at least one person who's in a senior job in this administration who I can't name. So, Sean, I'd love you to acknowledge that what's happening is not just something that should be kind of eyes rolled. It should be denounced by people in the Republican Party. Any conservative to say the head of the FCC is making mafioso-like threats against a private company, that's just as much of a hypocrisy.
No, just to be clear,
what you're correctly calling out on the left, right?
Right, and I said it yesterday. I am concerned about us using government tools to enact action. I do think ABC should have done it themselves. They weren't going to do it. So sort of nudging folks to remind them of what the last 10 years have been like for Trump supporters, isn't a bad thing. I think we do need to be careful how far we go. I actually care more about the future, because if we set the precedent that it's okay, I am concerned about that. But I will say that for all these people on their high horse that want to talk about the First Amendment and government intervention, they sure didn't seem to care the last 10 years.
I agree. I cared about it. I cared about it before, but I also care about it now. And it's I don't think it's enough. I say respectfully, and then Dan, as much time as you want.
No, you're making my point.
I don't think it's enough to just say it's unfortunate or I don't like it or ABC should have done it on its own. This is an extraordinary abuse of power. Extraordinary abuse of power, and it should be denounced as such. It doesn't mean you have to denounce them personally. I think the head of the FCC is a fascinating guy, but his own previous statements did not lay the groundwork for threatening a private company over content. If the argument is we shouldn't be licensing these people to do a extended biased presentation, I have no problem with that. Truly, I understand that point of view. But to say one statement from a comedian warrants government threats. But that's what he said, Sean. He didn't say.
No. I get it. But I'm also like, to make it seem like Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian and that was a joke is not what happened.
It's speech, but it's speech. I don't care.
Fine, but again,
he's a comedian.
Like I said, no, he's not. He's not funny.
It's speech.
Well, to you, he's not funny. I mean,
but the bottom line is this: as I've said, and I've been clear, I am concerned about my party, and overall, it's not a party thing. It's not like my side or their side. Philosophically, I don't like the government dictating a private sector what it should and should not be doing.
Well,
it's a hard time getting upset about looking at this and watching Chuck Schumer and these guys all start to cry about the First Amendment.
But you can do both. You can do both at once. You can condemn them. But what I'm saying is, again, I say respectfully, it's not, you're saying it's troubling or I wouldn't do it or I don't agree. It should be denounced. You should call for them to stop it. because it's outrageous what they've done. It really is. Dan.
So the only other point I would add is one underlying part of the FCC chairman's actions, I believe, is that there is a potential acquisition pending between some of these affiliates. And one of the things this administration had talked about precedent setting, Sean, is when you want to make an acquisition, you basically have to come with a substantial political offer to help this specific president. And if that starts to become the standard, that is a very dangerous game, and I think it's totally un-American.
I don't like the precedent that it sets because I worry about what your side will do when you start looking at Second Amendment gun companies and saying, if you don't put a gun lock on everything, if you don't do what we said, you can never own, you can't buy, maintain your first.
I mean, just anything. I mean, just you could go around an energy deal, a News Corp deal, anything. So.
Well, no. So, like I said, I do, but I have a hard time feeling really bad when I'm listening to Chuck Schumer talk about the First Amendment, which he hasn't given a crap about for 10 years. And when none of these people, by the way, as I said, let's not forget what's getting lost in this discussion. Jimmy Fallon going on last night, Stephen Colbert, and getting all upset. Not one of them commented that, you know what, while I think what Jimmy said was wrong, ... they have been silent on that. So until they're ready to admit what Jimmy Fallon said wasn't just abhorrent, it was wrong. It was wrong. It was a lie, and it was misinformation. For all these folks in the media who love to talk democracy dying in darkness and misinformation and the big lie, they are allowing this to continue when you talk about the magnified.
Well, no, almost every single story out there says what Fallon said was wrong. I mean, that is
disagree.
No,
disagree. Now people are saying, oh, it wasn't so bad. You can look at it if you squint and it's not so bad. I disagree, Dan.
Not the commentater, but
even the coverage. Even the coverage. I disagree.
Okay, I haven't seen that. Okay.
Disagree. Want more great clips like that? I've got an idea. Hit the subscribe button, be part of the Two-Way community, never miss a clip, and you can always watch our full episodes, join them live, go to twoway.tv.